Hello, in this video I'm going to demonstrate 12 useful Excel tricks. These are what I would consider to be core tricks in Excel that pretty much everybody that uses Excel should already know, but often I find CPAs that don't know all of these tricks. So I'm just summarizing them for you and giving you a quick demonstration just in case you don't know some of them. The first one is the ability to use the double click of the fill handle. Here we see I have a spreadsheet with a formula for net income and I want to copy it downwards. And so all I have to do is double click and it copies downward automatically. Now that might not be that impressive in this example because I've only got 15 rows I'm working with. But if you were using 30,000 rows, it works the same way. And that's really where the trick becomes very powerful. But what makes the trick work is that I have adjacent data that is solid. So when I click in D3 and click the fill handle, which is that little square in the lower right corner, double clicking it copies downward as long as there is adjacent data. Now that has changed a little bit since Excel 2010 came out. Excel 2010 allows that to still work if you have a connecting header. So in this particular example right here, there is a heading in cells B and C, but in cell E, column E, but not in column D. So double clicking doesn't work. Click, click, nothing happens. But if I were to have some type of heading here that connects those together, even one that's got the cap locks on, sorry about that, I can double click and it works properly because these headings connect the data together. So no longer, since Excel 2010, does your data need to be adjacent in adjacent columns. It can be in far-ranging columns as long as the headers keep everything connected. It's important to keep in mind that this double-click trick doesn't work if the cells in the adjacent column or in the distant column connected with the headers has blanks in those cells. But in some cases, as this simple example shows, the data is solid and it allows the data to copy down with a simple double click. Okay, the next feature we want to look at is the copy and paste. So I'm going to pull up a website page and I'm going to copy data from the college football statistics website page. And then when I go to paste it in, I'm going to just do a simple paste. And you can see that the default paste brings over the formatting, which has hyperlinks and grid lines and a certain type of fonts that are used. But if I use the paste as special, which is this paste as unformatted text option here, you can see that I can paste the data automatically, not bringing over any formatting, but adopting the default formatting that is in Excel already. And that default formatting happens to be Courier 10 point. So that makes it pretty easy for me to go in and do a little bit of formatting. And I've kind of brought this up. I would want to, in this particular example, bold and underline and center my headings as well. But you can see that pasting as unformatted text, whether you're pasting into Excel or pasting into PowerPoint or in Word, has the same effect. It adopts whatever your default formatting is, which saves you a little bit of cleanup time in the formatting area in some cases. Okay, let's look at the next Excel trick, which is the column width trick. In this simple example, we can see that columns B and C contain the data fairly well, but column D is not wide enough because the pound signs indicate there are data in those cells that can't be displayed because they're wider than the column. The simple way to solve this is to just simply put your cursor up in the right hand side of column D, up in the header portion and double click. That will automatically make your cells, your column width as wide as the largest entry in any of the cells in that column. Now what you can do is, if we pretended that this were a bunch of months, and let me just create that for you so you can see that. And I'll copy this over too. And in this particular example, I'm going to change some column widths for you, just so we can show you kind of a bigger example of using this double click trick. Now what we can do in this particular example, if you had data that looked like this, is you could highlight columns B through M and double click any one of those columns to the right in the upper header portion, and that will automatically adjust all the column widths so that they can display every content of every cell. Now, what sometimes this would do, it doesn't look at did it here, but sometimes, well, actually column L is a little wider than column K because it's bigger numbers. So what we can then do is grab the data, grab the column width, drag it out a little bit wider, and then all of the columns become the same width. And sometimes that's a nice way to straighten up and tidy up your data so that it is more attractive and a little easier on the eye to read on the page. Okay. Now we also, extending that, we have multiple columns, the ability to grab multiple columns. And in this simple example, what I have is I have some percent to total columns. And I'm going to hold down the control key and I'm just going to select those columns only. And then I'm going to drag one of them narrower. And in this case, what happens is all three of those columns that are selected become narrower. And you can see the result is that I've got a wider January, February, March column, but narrower percent to total columns. In this next example, what I want you to know is you can enter data by first selecting the cells where you want that data to appear. So I'm going to highlight, in this example, cells E8, 9, and 10, and then holding the control keys down, I'm going to highlight some more cells, and then I will even scroll down a little further and highlight with the control key held down some more cells. Now I'm going to hold down the enter key just so you can see this action. When I hit the enter key, you can see that this cursor jumps to each individual cell. And so in this particular case, I'm able to enter data, and I'll just throw in some random numbers, enter, enter, numbers, enter, numbers, enter, 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 numbers, enter. But you can see what the effect is. Just by selecting the cells using the control key first, you then have selected all the cells where you want data to be input, and then the enter key then moves the cursor to the next cell each time the enter key is pressed. So that just makes it easier. Now, if you're using a 10 key on a computer, then it works pretty much like a standard calculator that the CPAs are used to using. You can enter data and then hit the enter key and have the cursor jump to the next cell. And this would allow you to avoid having to arrow down or arrow across to each individual input cell. Okay, let's look at the next tip. Custom list. Now it's possible, and I've already created it here, but I'll show you how you do it. To come into your options, advanced, and scroll down to edit custom lists. And here you can create a custom list, and I've already created one of my executive team. So I've got Mary Lou and Ginger and Thomas and Sonny right there, and I've included the word exec at the top of that list. And then I clicked add and OK. So I created this list by typing it in. In fact, just for demonstration purposes here, I'm going to expand this. Let's put Sam Brothers in and Terry Moore. And then we'll click add and OK. OK. So now what we can do anywhere in Excel, in any workbook, one that's previously been created or one that we're just creating from scratch, we can type the word exec, and we can drag that fill handle downward, and we can fill the range with all my executive teams. Maybe I want that list to travel across the page. I can do it that way as well. I wrote Eric. See, I just demonstrated how it doesn't automatically know what you want. But if we write exec and grab that and drag, then that works quite nicely to put all that data in. So a custom list for a list of employees, or a list of maybe it's store locations, or maybe it's account numbers. Those are some things that you might want to consider creating. You're limited to 99 items on your list in the older versions of Excel. And in the newer versions of Excel, you're limited by the number of characters. So 512 characters total, so that your list may be longer than 99 or not, depending on how long your items are. I wish it were a little stronger. The custom list would handle thousands of entries, but that's not quite how that works. But it's still a good feature to know. The next feature we want to see is the Excel trick for selecting the entire worksheet. Now, most people know this. You can highlight an area, as I'm doing here. You can highlight some columns, as I'm doing some rows. But some people, surprisingly, don't seem to understand or weren't aware that you could click in the upper left-hand corner and select the entire worksheet. So that allows you to then copy or delete or format that entire page. You can print that area. But selecting an entire worksheet is one of those little core tricks that are very helpful. Not that big of a tip that people talk about it that much, though. And then finally, we look at the scroll tip feature. Whenever you're using the fill handle, such as I am here to drag the word January out, you can see the scroll tip shows me that I've already extended the range to April, now May, now June, and so forth. So if I wanted to go to September, I know where to stop. Another example is when you're numbering cells. Here I've highlighted cells 1 and B5 and B6, which contains the values 1 and 2, and I'm dragging that downward. And you can see the scroll tip shows that I have gotten to 15, and maybe I want to go down as far as 24. And so that scroll tip is a great little feature to keep an eye on when you're using the fill handle to get the results you want. So there you go, a handful of Excel features which aren't earth-shattering, but they are core to using Excel more efficiently. Hope you got something you can put in your back pocket to make you a little bit better Excel user. Thank you.